Welcome to the talk show where men unite, having conversations that inspire, ignite. From relationships to wellness, we cover it all. In this positive space, we're standing tall. We're the men of the talk show, spreading good vibes.
Well, fam, this is the last episode, two-part episode here in season 3. I'm so excited about all of the guests that have been able to join this season. But this is our final episode for this season. We have Dr. Clint with us. He's a transformational coach, and he's going to be telling, he has a whole lot of life of experience that we've just been talking before the show. And I'm happy to introduce him now, Dr. Clint. So go ahead and tell us where you're from, what you do, and then we'll get into the conversation of today's topic of why men feel afraid of their emotions, or have you ever been afraid of your emotions?
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very, very grateful. I love what you guys are doing, bringing attention to, men's mental health. Very, very important topic as we were discussing prior to coming on. So I'm Dr. Clint Stankiewicz, an actualization coach here in New Jersey. I work remotely, so I'm able to work across state lines and that kind of thing, but I'm based here in New Jersey. Come from the background of having over 20 years experience. I'm trained as a clinical psychologist originally. And, the past, 5 years or so, been doing, working as an actualization coach.
And let's get into that a little bit more. How was that experience like working as a transformational coach? What got you into that? Did you have problems that was going on and you wanted to impact other men around the world, or you just, you wanted to do that out of passion? What was your take of why you went in that direction?
Well, I mean, life has a way of, I appreciate the question. Life has a way of redirecting us. And I'm transparent with my story as we spoke about it. I struggled with addiction myself. And, ended up being so significant so that I lost my clinical license to practice. And while I'm in that, there's a pathway to get that forward. If I continue to do what I need to do, I need to work. And I loved helping people. I love helping people. It is my passion. It is my calling. It was what I'm supposed to be doing. But there was obviously some work and things that I need to be working on in myself, right? And the ability to work as an actualization coach, transformational coach, however you want to, kind of phrase it, allows me the flexibility to work across state lines, across country lines, and kind of work a little bit more authentically to who I am. And I feel like if anything I've been through only makes sense if I'm able to kind of pay it forward and help the next person. So again, I'm very grateful that you're having me and to be able to talk today.
Yeah. So now I wanted to get a little bit more personal into your life here.
Sure.
What has been your journey of your mental health? Like, what struggles have you been going through? I know you say you struggle with addiction.
Sure.
Obviously that's over with now, but take us through that journey of, what was it, what demons or what, triggers, got you to that point of, wanting to, do drugs or,
Yeah, I mean, it's a long journey, there's alcohol, substance abuse runs in my family going back for generations, and I don't blame anyone. My father's, one of my personal heroes. He's been in recovery since 1997. And just amazing man. Unfortunately, God rest their souls, I've also lost my nephew and my sister to this disease, right? Early on, I had a lot of learning disabilities. I had chronic ear infections. And so when you can't hear, you can't talk correctly. So, I had speech impediment, auditory processing disorder, dyslexia, and things of that nature. And so I was also, food was probably my first addiction. I was overweight. I'd sit down and eat like 8 Reese cups at a sitting, And so, yeah, right from the start, I started kind of looking outside myself, right, to kind of fill a void within myself, right? I found out that things like sugar, as we know now through the research and science with dopamine and all this sort of thing, but when I started feeling bad. So, um, I would utilize that for a long time. So one of my first struggles with my weight, I was over 100 pounds overweight at some point, and then so yeah, struggled through. I was in what they call the resource room. I was in a perceptually impaired class. My high school guidance counselor said, "Don't take psychology. That's one of the harder electives here." And I was fortunate enough to have great people in my life, like my grandfather, who would get frustrated, or something. I'd be like, "I can't do it." He'd be like, "There's no such thing as can't," over and over and over again. So, when my high school guidance counselor said that, I didn't pay any mind to it. I just kind of kept going. I had to start out at community college. I never took the SATs and just did really, really, just kept going. Kept learning what I needed to do. And again, had a supportive environment, a supportive family life, and that kind of thing. Ended up losing over 130 pounds, which at 6 foot tall, being 136 pounds at that point is manorexic. So I was very much struggling with my weight. And then as I would go along, I started gaining the right type of weight in the gym and that kind of thing, and started feeling a
So
little bit
just to
better.
clarify, you was underweight, right?
Yes, at that
Okay.
point, yes, so significantly so, and significantly underweight. And I knew that, but I mean, I had an impaired, distorted image of myself, right? And so, a lot of what I was trying to cover up, right? I mean, it staying with the theme of the topic today. A lot of what I was trying to work on was just kind of use food, use things outside of myself to deal with fear, to deal with anxiety, to deal with depression, to feel, feeling like I wasn't good enough, right? When you get picked on and you get bullied because of your weight and these kind of things, and you feel like you're the fat, dumb kid, you don't feel real good about yourself. And so you look outside of yourself and you try to find things to make yourself feel better, right?
Mhm.
And I grew up in a Polish German house, right? So we didn't, tough times don't last, tough people do, right? Pain is weakness leaving the body. So we don't really talk about those things. Um, and a lot of, and that's true of a lot of different cultures. It's not just my own, a lot of people I work with have similar stories,
Yeah.
and then as I started gaining the right type of weight, I started to notice that girls took an interest. That's great. I like girls, and I started hanging out, drinking, and very quickly I overdid it. I liked the way it felt. I liked it
Mhm.
a lot. And then what I found was I had the discipline by that age because I ended up really focused, really studying very hard, right? And I ended up graduating summa cum laude, uh, starting to get a little cocky, a little arrogant, and I would, say things like, "I'll get an A in this test or I'll walk home," after staying up all night partying, because I could, do what I need to do, be disciplined during the week, and then turn it on the weekend, party, turn it off like a faucet, and then eventually, and I
Yeah.
was able to do it. And seemingly, things were going well. Things were going well, right? For a long time, I'm starting to, but again, attention from ladies, attention from girls, drinking. Now I'm looking outside of myself because I feel inferior. This deep sense of I'm not good enough. This sort of inferiority complex that ran deep to my core. This sort of sense of I'm an imposter, and I continued the neurons that fire together wire together, right? So the longer we do something, everybody's like, yeah, Clint, you're getting a little crazy, you're getting a little crazy. But as long as I was, stacking up degrees, credentials, making money, I'm like, I don't want to hear any of that. I'm taking care of business on the outside. Now, if you asked anybody, because then I started, I struggled with my attachment, growing up. So when I was engaged 4 times, married twice, divorced twice as well, unfortunately. So again, I was, the unmanageability on the surface, it looked really good. I mean, I had the money, I was helping people, was high calling. I was credentialed at the highest level a clinical psychologist can be. Um, but I was struggling internally. And I didn't want to take a look at that. I did whatever I could to sort of avoid that. And I ended up hurting a lot of people that are very meaningful to me, that were very meaningful to me in my life, because the more alienated from yourself you get, the more alienated from other people you get, you know, and you become, this sort of bottomless pit trying to go outside of yourself, looking for other things to fill a hole that's, I've learned it to be God-sized hole these days, right? But you see this a lot in trauma, right? When we look at trauma, folks growing up and that kind of things, certain things become intolerable, afraid of certain emotions, right? You'll see this with intimacy. You'll see, folks with avoidant attachments. They sort of crave and they want that, but they're also kind of afraid of it simultaneously. And we, it took a long time. It took a long time because, for me, unfortunately, I had to lose everything in order to start to look up and be like, God, the way I look at it is God removed all the distractions, cleared all the clutter from my view to Him. Yeah.
So could you take me into the journey, like you, because you say you struggle with alcoholism, right?
And yeah, drugs, cocaine's a
Yeah.
hell of a drug.
Okay, so drug, yeah.
Hmm.
So they always talk about withdrawal symptoms. Like,
Mhm.
did you always need to get your next fix, or how did that go? Did you use other people to get what you wanted? What was
No,
that
I
thing?
mean, I had a binge pattern for a long time. I was
Mm,
able to kind of work, function, and nobody knew. I mean, the people closest to me, my wives knew, my family knew. But as long as I was providing, buying stuff, everybody was happy. Everybody wasn't happy. But in my mind, I'm doing what I need to do, right? Because I'm doing the things a man should. I'm providing, right? But being a provider is a lot more than that. I have still struggle with a lot of guilt, a lot of shame over the people that I've hurt. At its worst, yeah, it wasn't until probably after my mom died and I got my first divorce did I ever experience any withdrawal symptoms, because I never used for longer than 4 or 5 months straight. Like I said, I would turn it off. Things got a little crazy, take a couple of months off. Things get a little crazy on the weekend. Yeah, I'd be a little irritable on Monday, maybe a little anxiety on by Tuesday, but by Wednesday, I'm feeling fine. So I never had to deal with the full aspect of the withdrawal symptoms until things got really dark.
mhm.
I remember my second wife left with her stepdaughter, and I was just alone with the dogs, and that hurt. The house was empty. 3,000 square foot house. Swimming pool, the whole thing, and I'm just alone in the house, just drinking myself stupid. Right. I mean, so bad that, things like hand sanitizer, things like electric razor cleaner, things like vanilla extract that got that dark for me. I remember plotting, feeling so bad, right? Because she had left, the despair, the hurt, the pain, all of it, and really being angry at myself uh, because I saw myself as I don't know if I could swear here, but I felt like a fuck up. And you feel like bad things happen to bad people, so you get what you had coming. And I remember kind of thinking ways to take my own life. I could just go in the garage, drink myself stupid, leave the car on, and that kind of thing. And I remember shaking, hallucinating, and that kind of thing. Yeah, very, very difficult. But again, because I was stuck in that space, I mean, I was very, very self-destructive. And again, taking a look at those feelings inside myself, right? Taking a look at those things was just something I didn't want to feel, right? That the pain, the heartache, the remorse, the shame, the guilt, the sadness, the fear, all of it. You was doing whatever I could to cover that up. And there's the unmanageability of the illness now, kind of in full force, because I've had a host of legal issues, DUIs, things like that, that would come in. But now, you're losing relationships, you're losing work, you're losing money, you're losing income, you're losing friends, and you're just alone with yourself. And
So talk about like your friends. Like, did they feel isolated from you? Did the family feel like they couldn't really connect with you when you was doing
this,
drugs and stuff like that?
I'm very.
How was that? What was that dynamic like between family and friends? Because I know you said that they knew stuff that was going on, but like, did they have like an intervention to kind of help you out, or what was that?
Um, I had moved, and because of my shame, I pushed a lot of people away. A lot of I've been very fortunate today. My life is very rich. I have a lot of people who love me, who care about me, and I'm ever blessed for to have those things. But at the time, I was pushing people away. I was isolating myself because I hated myself. I didn't want anybody to see me this way. I didn't want to burden anybody. And again, I was on the self-destructive path. Like, well, this is what happens to bad people. I have this very self-punitive aspect of myself, a journey. One of my good friends helped me to see. I have this very punitive aspect about myself. And so I felt like I was sort of beyond saving, and sort of beyond redemption. And so I stayed isolated. But again, I'm fortunate today that that's not the space that I'm in. Um, and again, addiction, mental health, mental health, mental wellness, and that kind of thing is like very much like having a chronic illness. It's not about, I had a supervisor who was just like, you can cure him and you can cure me. You know what I mean? You need to manage it. You need to kind of do what's necessary to do. To kind of keep yourself in a growth space, to keep yourself in a space where you can support health and healing and that kind of thing. But a lot of people, in recovery, man, like they don't, well, I don't regret anything. It makes it sort of made me who I am. Yes and no. Did make me who I am, and I'm grateful for the lessons learned. But I'm not grateful, and I still have a lot of heartbreak for the people that I've hurt in my life through my addiction. Um, Through things that I didn't want to take a look at.
Now, are like all of them gone right now, or just some of them?
No, I lost my mom, and she was very close. My nephew, my sister, again, they struggled greatly. My father's been in recovery. He's been an inspiration to me. My mother's just a lot of things that needed to be said that I didn't get to say
Hmm.
to her, and that hurts. I use my spirituality to kind of, try my best to make amends there by living differently today. But it hurts. You carry that. My friendships are much more. My friendships are very. I have a rich dynamic of friends and support. I have an identical twin brother I'm very close with. Again, he's an inspiration to me. Um, every day, we stay connected. I am fortunate enough to be friends with my ex-wife, but I did a lot of damage there. There were things in those relationships on both sides. I'll just say that relationships are a two-player game, but I'm not here to, my job's to look at myself, right? We can't fix another person. We can fix ourselves by looking in the mirror, so that's the part I focus on. I love them deeply, both of them, you know who you are. Um, And, I'm you know, very, very sorry for any, hurt and pain that I've caused them, but I'm very fortunate that both of them are in my life in a positive way.
Yeah, and they always say the first step to recovery is to ask for help, right? And did you?
That was the certainly most challenging, for me, because again, afraid of, right? I mean, this whole step that, when you've reached that about, afraid of your emotions, it's the honesty, components, the first one, acknowledging with yourself that I can be honest enough to acknowledge that I'm in over my head here. I'm doing whatever I can. And because you're using things to avoid, you don't really see that you're experiencing it as intolerable, right? Because let's face it, all we have is right here and right now. It's like me and you talking right here, right? And if I feel like I need to drink or ingest a substance or food or attention from some, whatever it might be, right? We're all addicted to different things, right? Well, so, online or working, money, attention, you name it, right? I mean, when you're addicted to drugs and alcohol, though, it's sort of this a little bit more eyes on you and that kind of thing. And there's still a lot of stigma out there, right? And so that part's true. But simultaneously, I don't know where I was going with that. I lost the handle on it. Suffice to say that you have to be honest about what you're going through, and you don't want to be going through it, right? And so we're always doing things to kind of change. That's where I was going with this, right? I mean, or that when you're looking at addiction to this or that, it's really like there's some part of me that's fundamentally uncomfortable with what's happening here and now in the present moment.
And where do you think the addiction came from? Like, because we always talk about the backstory of what people been through, and that's how they use different substances or drugs to kind of cope with those things in life. So, what do you think that addiction came from? Like, if you
I
can
mean,
kind of dig deep into that, where do you think that came from?
no,
Is it
I
just
appreciate the question. I mean, if you and I can get to the bottom of this before the close will be, will have
an
helped a
ongoing,
lot of.
continuous cycle, right? We're
it's
never
it's
healed, right?
No, exactly, and it's really just about personal growth and development, and kind of building our course towards that every day. Some days I do better than others, but where it came from for me, again, it's a complicated question, and the research and science is has a little bit of shed some light on this, right? I mean, I have the genetic predisposition, right? I mean, going back generations, that's the genetic piece. The environmental piece, I saw it in my home, the drinking and that kind of thing. I just sort of saw that. And then as a result, the neurons that fire together wire together, right? So when you're in a home, and again, not blaming anything, because my parents are amazing people, and I wouldn't be who I am today without them. But when you're growing up, there's mom and there's dad, and even before we're verbal, you're picking up, things from the environment, right? Before you even have words, your brain's starting to develop certain connections about how to operate in the world, how to feel in the world, and things of that nature, right? And so I start to, pick those things up, right? And immediately, food, right? We're talking about drug and alcohol dependency. I'm looking outside of myself for something else. And, when I'm little, I can't drink quite yet, but I can eat. I can eat, and so things like food were right there. And again, Reese's peanut butter cups, very addictive, very addictive. And I still have to watch because I can get compulsive when eating Skittles, peanut M&Ms, things of that nature, Reese's peanut butter cups, ice cream. You know, I have to be careful because I will eat compulsively and that sort of thing. And it's something that have to be managed and I have to be aware of it. So I started picking up those things, straight away. And I had a predisposition or a predilection towards more. If a little's good, a lot more is better. So when people like, what's your addiction? Probably more. Is the big word. More of whatever it is. I like it. I'm going to chase it again. Jobs, money, attention, drugs, alcohol, food, sex, you name it, I'm chasing it, right? I'm not proud of those things, but it's how my addiction manifests, and it's how I have to be careful, right? And that kind of thing. So as I sort of got into it, again, neurons that fire together, wire together. So sugar, affects, similar refined sugars and these sort of things work on a similar process in the brain as any other addiction. So now I'm priming those channels in the brain. And once I lost the weight, I'm starting to get good at school, getting A's, getting attention. I threw alcohol and threw drugs on it, and I'm off to the races. But I walked right into it. I didn't drink like a normal person. I liked to be drunk. I liked to be high. And, wasn't anything I slipped into. By that time, my dad was, sober for many, many years. My stepmother's an amazing woman, drug and alcohol counselor. I just didn't care if I can manage it. I thought I was kind of straddling that line. That's part of my personality. I'll go right up to the edge, and I'll look over, and f around and find out, right? And sadly, I found out. I found out, but again, the fundamental challenge there was an inability to look inside at myself. I felt like maybe if I made enough money, if I just had enough degrees, I remember I was seeing a therapist. And so uh, when you're doing the clinical psychology thing, you get a license. And if you get a doctorate, I mean, that's pretty good for most. But, I always wanted, had this. I remember the movie The Natural. I don't know if anybody remembers that out there, but there's a part where Robert Redford is just like, he wants people to say, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best there ever was in this game. And that stuck with me when I was a little kid, and so when I was training, I wanted more credentials, and I remember only 4% of all psychologists were board certified at the time. So I got one, then I got another one, and then I was looking for a third that I never. And I remember saying to my therapist, once I get the third one, then I'll be happy. And we both had a chuckle because we both know how untrue that was. But there's this need to chase, right? And so by that point, it's just I didn't understand how much my person, who Clint was built around just feeling inferior, not good enough, right? And I'm not going to blame anybody, right? But you and I are older, so we can talk about, well, this happened and this happened. And when you're a little child and you undergo trauma of any kind, right? Physical, emotional, sex abuse, neglect, whatever it might be, you just sort of assume you're bad. You just sort of assume you're not good enough. You just sort of assume that you're defective, you're broken, you're weak. You don't know that. It's not like you're actively saying that to yourself. It's your sense of self, right? And that's where trauma really affects. And later on, when I work with the Department of Veterans Affairs, I'm like, well, this guy landed on Omaha. I'm not, I'm not doing that. That's trauma. And then want to take a look at where my own traumas were. I didn't want to take a look at those things. Um, and so you throw all those things, the trauma, the genetics, the environment, the neural pathways that you're sort of building. You throw all that into the pot, and you mix it up, and boom, there you go.
Yeah, that was a lot to process.
It is.
But
It definitely
it's
is.
rewarding to hear, you being so vulnerable and, comfortable sharing these things, because a lot of men, they suppress their feelings and they don't really, take that time to do that deep reflection like they need to. They need to understand that, life is not pretty. We go through ups and downs. I struggle with addiction myself, like, porn addiction.
Sure.
Just couldn't get enough of that, because I was not having sex as much as in my life. So I, wanted to go online and see what it was like, you
Sure.
know. I always struggled with my weight, but I was the opposite of you. I was I was overweight, like I wasn't underweight.
Okay. Well,
But
I was
then,
overweight and then became underweight. So I
yeah,
get, yeah,
yeah, and then I went back to being underweight, and then I went back to being overweight.
yeah.
So
I
it's like
hear that.
I don't know if it was genetic or something like that, but it was like I don't know why it's up and down, up and down. But that just goes to show you that life is not pretty. It's flows and highs. You know, it's ups and downs. It's always going to be something that we continuously, have to keep improving of ourselves. But the last two questions that I want to ask you before we end today, I wanted to know, um, well, how has helping other men, shape who you are today? Because I know obviously you can relate to men because you've been through so much in your life. You're probably one of the realest, licensed psychiatrists that I ever had on here. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
you're
I
probably one of the
appreciate.
realest ones that I ever that would actually divulge into their personal life like that. But what was that? How's that journey when you're with them? Like, did you lay it all out on the table and say you can be as vulnerable or as little as vulnerable as you want to, but know that, I can peep when somebody is not.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, first of all, I need to clarify again. Currently, I'm not a licensed clinical psychologist. I practice as a life coach because, again, I lost my license
Okay.
while I'm in the process of gaining that back. Um, I learn much from the people that I work with, and I got to tell you, helping other people gives me a sense of meaning and purpose, and it's probably the only reason. It's a couple of great friends, great relationships I have in my life, but between that and the opportunity to help other people, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. We're all interconnected, and if there's one thing that has pulled me through, because truthfully, when we help ourselves, we help those around us, and when we help somebody else, we're also helping ourselves, right? We're all connected, we're all one in that way, and so I owe my life to that. But being the journey from when I was struggling, as a licensed clinical psychologist, but still obviously not doing the right things before I had lost my license, I felt like a fraud, and so that hurt me, in terms of my own identity, right? Kind of move now that I own who I am, what I've been through. Um, it's a whole different feeling. It's really really hard to even explain the gratitude and how blessed that I feel I am, because I can be 100% authentic and genuine to who I am and show up with the full spectrum of my capabilities, intelligence to help other people and to allow them to help me, right? Sometimes there'd be things that people say, and again, now that I work as a coach, I can be like, that song that you mentioned, that hit, or that was, I appreciate you saying that, that helped me, and that's all about, if you think about, pulling it back to 12 steps, whatever you want to call it, whether that's for you or that's not for you, there's many paths to get better. Uh, but the essential factor there is people hanging out together to help each other, right? So I don't see myself as the doctor helping anyone, you know, using my experience as a guide. I've been down to the hole, so I'm going to jump down there with you because I know how to get out, and that's the part. That's the blessing to me every day. That's the part that makes me, kind of get up grateful and looking forward to life, is how can I help someone else, because again, none of that stuff, as bad as it got, none of that stuff makes sense unless I could help another human being. If it helps one person, then it was worth it. You know what I mean? If I can help just one person, and I like to think it was a lot more than that in my 20 some years of this, but that's what it's all about for me.
And then my last question here is, what do you hope to do moving forward? Like, do you still continue to be, do you still want to be a transformational life coach, or you want to pivot into hopefully getting back into being like, a full time licensed psychiatrist?
Psychologist.
Psychologist.
It's all right. So, I mean, a lot of times people use,
Yeah, I always get those two confused. I
yeah,
don't know why.
it's all right. That's a good question. I work very hard for my clinical license, and I'm in the process of trying to obtain that back because the license allows me to do other things that I feel like I have some gifts and abilities in that I would like to do in terms of opening doors. But again, more broadly, the coaching thing, the more sort of genuine, the more I, kind of work in my own work, I just like the flexibility to work also from the coaching standpoint, because, while there's strict boundaries, when I work as a coach, I'm like, shoot me a text if you're struggling, right? Life doesn't happen on a week to week basis. I see you on Monday and I see you next Monday. Well, what if you're struggling on a Wednesday, man? Give me a call. I'm not charging extra for that. That's not what this is about. You know, I'm here to help people, and so if you, you can send me a text or send me a call and I can help. Yeah, we're going to be able to move quicker towards your goals. Or when I was praying, well, it's a boundary violation right there. And, listen, I get it. I'm not taking any away from the practice of clinical psychology, but I like the flexibility, if that makes sense, to kind of work like that when needed. But yeah, I'd like to kind of continue where everybody, I just skimmed the surface of a lot of my story, and a lot of people sort of said, well, there's a book to be written here. And I'm a good clinical writer. There's a great friend of mine. I love her dearly. She's kind of, I've enlisted to sort of help out with potentially that process and she's very good at creative writing and that kind of thing, to potentially get some thoughts down on paper and see where we can go, because I think that could help a lot of people as well. And so it's just, I'm trying to do better every day, so that's going to be my journey is whatever happens from the process of me getting better every day, trying to help other people every day. Then that's, we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. I do want to thank you for being on here today as a guest. I thank you for being so vulnerable and
Sure.
really going back to reflect a lot of deep, painful things, because I could hear it through your voice that it was not painful, that it was, very painful to talk about those things. But, that's what we're here. We're here to share light on our experiences in order to help
Absolutely.
people, thrive and survive, because it's not easy in this world. Like, we all need that extra support system to know that we're not alone. We're not crazy. We go through some of the same things, maybe not the same exact things, but we do go through similar things. And there's
Absolutely.
nothing to be ashamed about. Like, because I know a lot of men did not make it today when they struggle with drug addiction.
There's a lot of close friends that aren't here along this journey. So I say my prayers for those folks that are here with us and that aren't here with us. You're right about that.
Yeah. And just one last question, like what would be one piece of advice you give to men that's kind of struggling right now?
Just one piece of advice, just one piece. Don't give up. Don't ever, ever give up. I used to tell people I was too stupid to stay down because I'll just keep getting up. I'll just keep getting up. Keep getting up. Because you don't know when you're going to get it. You don't know when it's going to click, and just understand that you're worth it. Understand that you're worth it. We're all connected. My life is better because everyone is in it. And so my life is less than when there's one less person in it. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and I would say no matter what's going on, you will make it out of that dark. Hold the tree. There is light at the end of the tunnel, man. You don't have to feel like you're alone. There will be people that's gonna be rooting for you. You don't worry about the people that's not in your life anymore, because that's done and over with. You have to move forward and do better in your life, because we want you to be here. If you're not,
Amen. And there's people willing to be there and wrap their arms around you, say welcome. Amen. Thank you for saying that.
yeah. All right, well, that's all the time we have today, Clint. If you ever want to come back on and meet my co-host, that's fine too. If you
Yeah,
ever,
I love that.
yeah,
I love that. I love what you guys do. whatever I could do to support this, please keep me in mind.
Yeah, and I will. And also, this episode will go out in a couple of weeks here, and I'll send you
Okay.
the link. If you have any other friends or family, specifically men that maybe want to share their stories, if you can send them my way too. I'll post all the links in the description, and I'll message you on LinkedIn so we can further connect on that way too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There is someone I'm thinking of right now. He's been a blessing to me. I won't mention his name, but you know who you are. I work closely with him. He's also in recovery and helping a lot of people. I love him. One of my closest, dearest friends. So, yes.
All right. We'll talk to you later then. See you.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.